Hello, my name is Blake, and this is Stop Making Sense. Bloodborne is almost 2 years old now, and while it's still being played by thousands of people for its phenomenal gameplay, I was playing with a friend the other week, and he said this.
Yeah, I was playing Resident Evil 7 the other day, and, it's a great game, but it's actually easier to fight the enemies in Resident Evil 7. Coming back to this game, it's way scarier to fight these enemies than an actual horror game.
This got me wondering on why Bloodborne, even though it's considered to be an action RPG, is still scarier than many of the games that are described as horror. This is because of three key things that FromSoft's designers nailed when focusing on the horror of Bloodborne: the lore, the aesthetics, and the gameplay. Spoiler alert.
Master Willem, I've come to bid you farewell.
Oh, I know. You think now to betray me.
No, but you will never listen. I tell you, I will not forget our adage.
We are born of the blood, made men by the blood, undone by the blood. Our eyes are yet to open.
Fear the old blood. I must take my leave.
By the gods, fear it, Lawrence.
Bloodborne's lore plays a crucial part in developing the horror of the game for the player. I won't go into too much detail, as lore hunters who are much better than me at finding secrets can do that for you. VodiVidya, in fact, has a very in-depth look at the lore of the game. I'll link to that in the description. But here's the short version. There was a college. This college found the blood of an ancient godlike race. They discovered that the blood could cure any disease. They gave it freely to the city of Yharnam through the healing church, and the blood makes people go crazy and turn into beasts. Now, that is way too short to give a good description of what's happened in this world, but the point is that the major characters in this story are messing with forces that they do not understand, and by using the blood, they are awakening things that are beyond human comprehension. The healing church has this blood that they do not understand. They use it anyway. The people of Yharnam don't understand what the church's intentions are, but they worship them anyway. This blood, the old blood, leads to madness and beasthood, and it has affected everyone. As Eileen the Crow says,
"Prepare yourself for the worst. There are no humans left. They're all flesh-hungry beasts now."
This adds to the horror of the game because as the player goes through their journey, killing everything in their path, they start to realize that these beasts were all humans once, and that they've been turned into these things because they were being lied to.
I was once a hunter too. There's nothing more horrific than a hunt. In case you fail to realize, the things you hunt, they're not beasts. They're people. One day you will see. It's time you got going.
Another aspect of Bloodborne's lore that adds to the horror of the game is that you may not be playing as the good guy here. As the beggar says when you attack him,
"Oh, you are a sick puppy. You drink the blood of half the town, and now this! And you talk of beasts! You hunters are the real killers!"
This, as well as the brutal experiments that the hunters did on people in the research hall, as well as the church and its hunters' desecration of the fishing hamlet, all lend to the fact that maybe the beasts aren't attacking you out of sheer bloodlust. They're attacking you because you are the enemy. The church and its hunters are responsible for the beasthood that enraptures the citizens, causing them to kill their families and destroy their city. And when they see you, they want their revenge. Aesthetics play a massive role in any game, but in particular, aesthetics and art style are incredibly important in horror games. Your game is not going to be scary if it doesn't look scary. This element and attention to detail is prevalent in almost every aspect of Bloodborne. The game's looks are designed to creep you out. From the architecture of the buildings to the enemy designs, the game does everything possible to make the player feel vulnerable. From the Bram Stoker-inspired werewolves and zombies of the early game to the cosmic monsters of H.P. Lovecraft designs in the later game, the enemies in Bloodborne often tower over the player, and if they don't, they almost certainly have tricks up their sleeves to remind you that they shouldn't be messed with. Another major factor in the aesthetic horror of Bloodborne is the level and world design. Looking at the design of Yharnam, the layout of the city makes no sense. The city is full of dead ends, pitfalls, and traps, causing the city to have an unnatural and unsettling design, with buildings rising vertically on top of each other, giving the sense that the city grew too quickly for its own good. The Gothic architecture perfectly encapsulates the Gothic horror of the 19th century and adds to the sense that the player is a foreign character in a foreign land. The little details of the world also play a huge role in the horrific elements of the game. Things like the alien statues and the chained-up coffins are used to great effect in reminding the player of the despair and destruction that the city is facing. Aesthetics is more than just art and character design, though. Sound design also plays a crucial role in horror entertainment. Listen to all the noises that can be heard by the player if they just stand still in Central Yharnam.
I must live.
In this particular spot, you can hear the ambience of the city, the heavy breathing of the beasts that are ready to kill you as soon as they see you, the murmurings of the beasts as their madness and bloodlust consumes them, and the faint sound of a baby crying. These sounds change as you go through different areas in the game, but one constant thing is that the sounds are always there. As well as the ambient noise, there isn't any music in these areas. So these sounds, and the sounds of your footsteps alone, are what you hear throughout the game constantly, as you run around the world trying to figure out just what is going on. This keeps the player's senses heightened, because they always know that something is lurking around, something that wants, most of all, to kill them. Finally, the most important part of any game is its gameplay, and Bloodborne's is fantastic. Taking the gameplay from Dark Souls and updating it to be more aggressive and faster paced is not only a great idea from a fun standpoint, but it cements just how terrifying this game can be. From enemy placements that make you go, Jesus fuck, to the relentless combat of enemies, all make the player feel vulnerable. Notice how I brought up the player feeling vulnerable again. No horror game worth its salt is not going to succeed in making the player feel vulnerable. Let's jump back a bit in time and look at Doom 3, a game that was deliberately considered a horror game by its developers. Now, skipping past the fact that Doom was never really a horror game series to begin with, looking at the gameplay, it fails to deliver the scares as well. By the end of the game, your character has access to rocket launchers, chain guns, the BFG, and flamethrowers. This makes you feel like a one-man killing machine, and that causes a lack of vulnerability, which in turn causes a lack of scares. Bloodborne does the opposite. You are a one-man killing machine in this game, yet you never feel invulnerable. Even the weakest enemies from the beginning of the game can still kill you at the end of the game if you mess up. This way, even if you take your overpowered character through the opening areas of the game, you still have to play on your toes, because a few wrong moves, and you're dead. One of the most horrifying aspects of the gameplay is how your experience is treated after death. Like all other Souls games, when the player dies, they leave a bloodstain behind that can be collected for a full retrieval on the next life. However, the difference in Bloodborne is that the enemies can pick up your bloodstain as well, causing them to collect all your blood echoes. Often, the very enemy that killed you is the one that picks up your blood echoes, forcing the player to face the enemy who just the life before defeated them. Forcing the player to fight and defeat the enemy that just killed them skyrockets the tension and adrenaline the player feels and creates an intense fear of not just the enemy who has already established that it can kill you, but a fear of failure as well. This leads me into my final point about how the gameplay affects the horror of Bloodborne, and that is just like how every enemy can kill you, you can kill every enemy. A lot more of the traditional horror games that are coming out right now have gameplay where you are being chased by a horrific one-hit kill monster. This was a trend that was first set in 2009 with the release of the original Slender and has continued in games like Outlast and Alien Isolation. While this mechanic does a great job of making the player feel vulnerable, it almost goes too far in that direction. This mechanic makes the player feel helpless and teaches you to run away from your fears. In Bloodborne, you can't run away. You can't run away from that giant axe-wielding monster because there are two more waiting for you just around the corner. In Bloodborne, you can't hide under a desk or in a vent and wait for the creature to pass you by because they never go too far. But in Bloodborne, you can fight that creature. Bloodborne makes you face your fears. In Bloodborne, you have to look at that giant wolf, that giant spider, or that giant headless hooked arm thing and say, I can beat you. And while it may take you dozens of times, you will eventually beat it. This is what makes Bloodborne stand out from other horror games. While other games make you run away from your fears, Bloodborne makes you look at your enemies, face them head on, and conquer them. All while waiting for the next fear to arrive. Hey everyone, I'm Blake. Thank you so much for watching our Bloodborne horror video. Bloodborne is my third favorite game of all time, so getting the opportunity to talk about the horror of it with you guys has been really awesome. If you want to learn more about Bloodborne's lore, check out Vidya's video. I will link to that in the description, as well as that if you want to learn more about Bloodborne's H.P. Lovecraft connection, George over at Super Bunny Hop has a really great video on that as well, so I'll link to that one also. This is our first video. As a channel, we are Stop Making Sense. We are a channel that focuses on analysis of art, games, and tech, so if you're into any of that stuff, definitely hit the subscribe button because we come out with new content every single week. So keep making great horror games and stop making sense. See you next week.